All right, we are live. Welcome back to another episode of the Manaverse podcast. I'm your host, Tom Draplin, and this is the podcast where we talk about building successful, friendly local game stores. And I have with me Trey MacCampbell, the owner of Brass Dragon, which you can see in the background there, right above his head, Brass Dragon Games. And we're going to talk a lot about the industry and everything, and we're just going to dig into it. And I'm sure this is going to be a very fun conversation. So welcome, Trey. Thank you very much for joining me today. I know it's been a hassle getting it together, but we're here.
Well, man, I just appreciate your patience in dealing with my schedule and illness and whatnot, things like that. So, Tom, thank you for the opportunity. I knew when we talked earlier, and I know this is not a plug for Event Forge, but when we had the Event Forge conversation, I was like, this is somebody I would really like to spend some time talking to, because I think we had some interesting chats in between all the technical stuff. So I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. I appreciate your time and the coordination and all the effort that it took to get here, but we were here, and I feel the same way. We just kind of had that click, right? There was just a bit of a banter, like, this would be a fun conversation to have. You've got an interesting story to tell, I can tell. And let's start there. So give us a little bit of perspective. Somebody who's listening to the podcast for the first time, what is Brass Dragon Games? Who are you? How did you get here? Let's start us off there and paint that picture.
All right. So I guess the first thing that I want to share with everybody is that we've been open for 7 months and in an actual store location, but I actually began almost 2 years ago just doing pop-up markets and things like that because I wanted to kind of feel the industry out and see what it was like. But I've got to be straight with everybody. I did not roll a D20 or play any type of a tabletop game any more stringent than like Exploding Kittens for 30 years. I played all the way through high school. I was a Dungeons and Dragons guy, so I played all the way through high school. In early 90s, as I was finishing up college, I was introduced to Magic the Gathering. It was this new thing. The guy at a little bitty game store where I was going to school invited a bunch of us D&D guys over to try this new game, and it was like 92 or 93, and I didn't get it. I was like, okay, Magic, cards, but yeah, when I graduated, I spent my formative years. I promised my mom I'd graduate, and I ran off and joined a band. That's what you do, right? You get your degree, and then you go be a musician. So I was a full-time musician for a few years. Yeah, so. So I didn't really play anything for a while. The music thing did not work out, obviously, because I'm not, living on a beach someplace counting my money. But, moved back to Nashville, Tennessee, we're located right outside of Nashville, Tennessee, in a place called Mount Juliet. So I moved back in the mid 90s and did the proverbial cut your hair, sell out to the man kind of deal. But I built a really successful career in corporate America that I didn't really mean to. I just accidentally got good at things like sales and account management and just any type of a job where it involved talking to people. I really did learn from very good salespeople how to listen and things like that. And I built a solid career for 30 years. But there's only so much corporate America anybody can take. But during that time, I kind of lost a little bit of kind of some of the things that bring me joy. I don't know if any of you have found yourself in that place where you just somebody asks you, well, what do you love doing? And, for me, I love playing music, but you can't really play music all the time. I mean, you can sit down and play your guitar, but, getting a gig is not always easy and things like that. And one of the things that I truly missed, that I truly enjoyed, was I missed playing Dungeons and Dragons. And I happened to be married a couple of times to people who didn't really get it. So I let this whole side of my brain and my heart kind of like dormant, I'm really good at getting married, by the way. I'm 100% on proposals. So, but when the pandemic hit and I was going through divorce number 2, my kids were like, Dad, have you seen Stranger Things? And I'm like, no, it just didn't look like something that appealed to me. They're like, oh my God, Dad, it is your childhood from the 80s put on the screen. You've got to watch it. And so I started watching Stranger Things, like, oh, they really got it right. This is the early 80s. That they nailed it. And then, but my kids were like, but we want to learn how to play Dungeons and Dragons. I was like, you got it, So, I mean, like any good dad, first of all, I'm pretty sure my mom sold all my books and everything probably when I was away in college at a garage sale. I mean, just, and of course, at the time I was playing in the 80s, I mean, I had at least one first edition player's handbook, and then I had the AD&D player's handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide, all the stuff from the 80s that everybody's looking for now. I had all of them, first printings of all those things. They're gone. Yep. So I roll down to the same game store that I've been going to pretty much since high school. Still there on its third owner, but I roll in there and and I don't know if any of you guys can relate to this. I rolled in and I said, I want to teach my kids to play Dungeons and Dragons. And, the guy pointed to the corner and said, "There's a starter kit back there, and there's a player's handbook, and there's some figs. You got everything you need." I went, "Okay." I guess I neglected to say I haven't played in 30 years. So I went from version 2 in 2021 to to 5E, which came out in 2014. I'm like, I missed like, 2.5, 3 versions, right? So
Yeah, so you
I opened the
needed to
player's
learn how to
handbook,
play
bro, and
Dungeons and
I'm like,
Dragons too.
yeah, yeah. I'm like, so I opened the book and I'm like, what did they do to my game, man?
I'm
This
sure.
guy's armor class is 18. He's gonna die, So as I dug into the game, I actually sort of fell in love with it all over again because I really enjoyed the addition of this storytelling aspect of Dungeons and Dragons. They really emphasized that. I'm not sure in versions 2.53, 3.54. I don't know. But in 5E, I was like, man, this is cool. The whole concept of the backstory. And, when I was playing early on, Tom, when in like 81, 82, I mean, when it's time to roll up characters for a new campaign, you rolled up 3 or 4 of them because you knew somebody's not coming back from the first session. It's like on Star Trek, the guys in the red shirts, somebody's not coming back from the planet. So I love that. But in relearning the game, I rediscovered 2 things. First of all, my love of the game, the fantasy setting, all the things that have been still rolling around in my brain. I may not have played, but I'm still a nerd. I'm still a geek. I mean, I'm steeped in Lord of the Rings and Marvel lore. That's my world, that kind of thing. So even though I wasn't playing, it's still who I am, right? So getting back into the D&D thing was terrific. And I taught my kids to play and some of their friends. And then I had another friend of mine who wanted me to teach him and his kids. And so next thing you know, I got a campaign going with a buddy of mine and his 3 like grown kids, and then actually the guitar player in my band and his wife joined us. So next thing you know, I'm starting a party. And as I was teaching them, I thought I really would love to do this a lot more. And I discovered that a lot of times, most of the game stores around here, they get pretty crowded, and it can be, I think, for a brand new player, it can be a little intimidating to walk into a place where it's kind of loud and everybody's laughing and carrying on, but it seems like everybody knows what's going on but you. And my first thought was I just wanted to start a place, give me like a little place where I can put a few tables and I can just have some other DMs, and maybe we'll just do like a DM school kind of thing where we'll just bring people in and teach them to play. That was the original idea. I was looking for a place to just teach people to play in kind of a laid back, more casual environment than an average game store. And then I could never there's just no way to make it work. I kept having people say, "Why don't you open a store?" I'm like, man, I don't want to do retail. And, so, but,
times have changed, I guess.
Yeah, well, they kind of, they definitely have, but I think you've probably experienced this with your background in retail, particularly in the tabletop games industry. It's a different model than anything I'd ever done. In all of my corporate sales jobs, I was kind of the guy. I was the guy from Asmodee. I was the guy from Universal. I was the guy from ACD, GTS. I was the guy who sold the stuff to the people who sell the stuff. That was always what my corporate role was. So I kind of understand the whole distributor model and things like that, but this industry was just wacky, man. And I wasn't sure I wanted to get into it. But I decided, you know what? I couldn't, there's no other way to pay for my space. That's what it really came down to. There's no other way to pay for the space because I don't know that I can charge somebody a membership to just come and sit a few times a month, or, I just really could never make it work. So I started doing market research like the dork that I am. And I'm doing things like looking at the area I live in, and I'm reading the census information, and I'm reading, I don't know if you guys know, but every year at the Gamma convention, they do a white paper where they do kind of the state of the industry. It's a brilliant white paper that they present there, and then they make available online. So I went and downloaded like the last 3 years of sort of the state of the tabletop games industry. And I decided, you know what, my little town could probably support a game store. So I kept my day job for a minute, and I just started getting signed up with the distributors that would let me sell without having a brick and mortar store. And I started doing pop-ups, started doing pop-up markets, so it's me and like the lady that makes candles next to me and the guy who's selling his wooden bowls, and it's like, you can imagine, craft fairs and what pop-up markets are like. But the more and more people that came up to me and said, "Where's your store? Where's your store?" And if I can sell like an $80 game like Scythe out of a tent, I'm like, I think this community might be ready for a game store. And
that's a good indication.
Yeah. And in Nashville, Tennessee, and where I live in Mount Juliet, we're growing so fast. And our property values and commercial rent is through the roof because we've had such a huge influx of people. So, as much as I was looking for a place, I'm like, I I was freaking out, man. And I'm sure that everybody who's ever started a store, so I'm talking to you, if you're thinking about it, if you're thinking about opening a game store, lesson number one, the biggest line item, and this is going to sound counterproductive, but I've heard this from a couple other small business owners in other industries too. The biggest line item on your budget cannot be your rent. I'm going to say it again for the people in the back, louder. The biggest line item on your budget cannot be your rent. If anything, it should be your payroll. Or if it's not your payroll, it needs to be your purchases of stock.
Yep.
So
Yep.
when you see this place that's beautiful and it's, it's $8,000 per square foot or whatever it is. I mean, just some of the prices I heard around here were ridiculous. I mean, it's just, so for a year and a half, I kept looking and I just couldn't find a place that I felt like I could afford. And when I finally had just about given up, two things happened. The first thing that happened was, and if anybody is coming into this industry without a retail background and you've done anything else, especially if any of you have ever sat in a cubicle, which is what I did for 30 years. I mean, the last few years were, virtual cubicle. I was at home, working from home in front. I like to say I was handcuffed to a laptop, in the middle of one of those conference calls that we all would get dragged into, one of those conference calls that could have been an email, but it's going on and it's going on. And I'm talking to one of my customers who's in India. So it's 5:30 in the morning, my time. And we're having a polite but firm argument about the fact that my company can't do what your company wants us to do, yada, yada, yada. We're going around and round in circles. I just snapped. I'm surprised you didn't hear it. It's probably just, when I cracked, I'm surprised that I didn't just scream. But I very calmly walked downstairs and said, "Hey, honey." She was actually working from home at the time too. I said, "Hey, honey. So I'm done.
It's like,
I'm going to make the game.
I quit.
I'm out. I'm going to make the game store happen." And she's like, "All right, sport. There's two of us in there." Like, I know. So I started looking in earnest. And about the time I had completely given up on finding a place, I was about 2 months into my crap. Maybe this isn't going to happen. I've quit my job, and selling online sucks if you try to do it, which I had also tried to do. He's like, "Nothing was happening, man. I need a store." Right at the time I was about to give up and go get another job, the landlord from the Midway Center, which is where I am in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, it's the oldest, funkiest strip center in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. I remember when it was built in the early 70s, and the family that owns it is just like the nicest bunch of people. And I had put my name in a while back because there was a waiting list. And I'd always heard that the waiting list was there because it was just the rent was affordable and the people were nice, which I've also heard, key tip, you cannot put a price on a good landlord. Having a landlord that is truly willing to work with you. And, I know they own the building and there's only so much they can do. She called me and said she had somebody moving out. And this was like last week of August, first week of September. She's like, "You can get the keys October 1st. And I'm like, oh, and then I froze, bro. Cause I'm like, I'd kind of already been like, this is not going to happen. This was a dumb idea. I wonder if I can get my job back. Right.
You already checked out by then.
Oh, I was, yeah.
It's like, no, wait, it's real.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But I tell people for years and years, I found myself telling people, you're guaranteed that you're going to, because I managed people too. I wasn't just a sales guy for 30 years. I managed sales teams. So I've always been a leader. I can tell you, I started to have to believe my own junk that I've been telling people for years. One of them is you're guaranteed to miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Fear has caused more failure than actual failure. You know what I mean? Like people who never even get off go. So all of a sudden she's telling me I can get the keys. I freaked out for a couple of days and I was like, "Nope, game on. Let's do it." And so we opened October 24th of last year. We just crossed over into month number 7. My rent is probably a third of what this size space would be anyplace else in Mount Juliet, because the lovely people who own this property believe that their gift to the city is being the place where people can start their small businesses, which is also why people rarely leave this shopping center.
Sure.
But they're just the nicest people. They're super flexible. They were very instrumental in helping me get started. So I took this place that used to be an after school program for like 15 years, the 1,200 square foot rectangle with 75 coats of paint over the past 40 years, and wallpaper that wasn't completely peeled off, and they painted over it anyway, and a carpet that I'm pretty sure came with the building. It was that really low industrial commercial carpeting that's like paper thin. When I pulled that up, man, I should have had a hazmat suit on. Oh my gosh, man. It was funky, but we took this place, and in, just under a month, we turned into the beginnings of a game store. And so that's how I got into this. That's just the getting here part. And you would think that all my lessons came early, but no, 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 no. The lessons started coming once I opened. And actually, you know what? I'll bet you there's probably a lot of people that are listening, and probably even you yourself could probably agree with that. I guess the old saying is, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. I mean, I think I knew. I'd studied the business for a couple of years. I went to Gamma when I didn't even have a store yet. I went to the Gamma convention just to talk to other store owners from around the country. So I'd done some
Smart.
serious research. But yeah, we opened and it took off like a shot, and it has been quite a ride these past 7 months. But I guess my biggest thing I can tell you in kind of wrapping up our intro here is that we've been open for 7 months. Every single month we beat the prior month in sales. I mean, not by a ton, but I mean, we're still growing, which is wonderful. The bill collectors are not knocking on the door yet. The lights are still on, so we've got a pretty good shot, I think, of beating that first year small business curse. But it's been a ride. It has been a roller coaster. So that kind of brings us up to speed on me and how I got pulled into all of this.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's great to hear that there's a positive growth trajectory, right? That's what you want to have, and that is a very good indication that things are going well. And like you said that, you don't know what you don't know, and you expected the lessons to kind of be front loaded in a sense, but it's not until you start doing the thing, at least from what I found.
Mm-hmm.
Once you do it, once you start really getting into it, you learn so much along the way. And that's where you really start to like, oh, okay, so this is what I have to do to do this correctly. This is what I need to do. And yeah, it's hard. Like, you need to do the work beforehand, right? You did the research, you did the market research, you did you looked at the population, what the potential locations could be. There's all these things that you have to do prior to that. If you skip, you're probably going to have a really rough time if you just pop open one day. But there's no substitute for the actual experience once the doors are open and customers start coming in and they start telling you, or they start buying from you and start telling you with their wallets, what they want, right? And what they need from your store, from what you can provide to the community and all of this feedback. If you don't exist and the store's not there, there's no way to get that experience. So it's really, it's great to hear that you made that leap and it has worked out so far. And it's looking like it's going to be, we're going in the right direction right now, which is awesome.
It is. And I'm actually writing that down because you just said something that's really fun. You just did another one of those things that I love, because you've already done this to me once today. You've already encapsulated something that I thought I understood, but I didn't. And that is, the customer's wallet will tell you the direction you need to go. Oh, yeah. That's a very, very interesting thing, because I think I had an idea.
I wanted to circle back. You said, you started the business, or at least the seed of the idea came from the love of D&D, the experience that you had when you were younger. I want to teach other people, Dungeons and Dragons. And that's where that was the core of it. And then kind of the business gets built around it. So has that survived in that iteration? Is that really still the core of the business, and the retail side supplements and funds it?
It changed, but in a good way. So what ended up happening, and God, I'm so glad you asked it. I'm so glad you asked that question that way. At the very core of Brass Dragon Games is a desire to create community, and to create that community around a game table, which is why I love Dungeons and Dragons so much. Every time, because I didn't just have that group of people that became sort of my campaign. Off and on, like right after, between 2021 and 2025, I would go and do one shots for people from time to time. You know what I mean? I would just go, somebody's like, I wonder what that's all about. I'm like, hey, I'll come and bring you a bunch of pre-made characters and I'll show you. So I had some experience in just teaching people from zero. And one of the things I always led with, and I still lead with, is, and you can actually, so for purposes of what I'm about to say, just pull out Dungeons and Dragons just for a second and plug in Magic, plug in, One Piece, plug in Marvel Champions. Just think about anything where people are gathering around a table. I discovered that when people get together and they do something in community and in person, and studies actually show that after the pandemic especially, people craved connection in person. Because I know a lot of us played online during the pandemic when we couldn't get together. But there's something different about hearing the dice at the table in person. There's something different about looking down at somebody laying their cards down in front of you, across the table from you. So at the core of this business is that desire to be the place where you find your next new favorite game. And so we do lots of learn to play events. At one point, I was up to doing what I call Dungeons and Dragons 101. I was up to doing it 4 times a month. Now I just do it bi-weekly because I just don't have time to do it as much as I did. in the beginnings, but that's the core. And I think what people react to, and one of the things that I think has created the vibe that is bringing people into the store, is that we are focused on, we're not just focused on all the people who come to game stores anyway. That is probably one of my key differences, and I've verbalized it from the beginning, and everybody who works for me understands. I have no interest in being just like every other game store. Not that they're doing anything wrong. We're going to learn from the things that work, but I want to be the place where somebody who would never normally come to a game store doesn't only come, but they come because they want to learn how to play fill in the blank. And then they're like, this place is cool, and then they invite their friends. I've had people sitting at my table to learn how to play Dungeons and Dragons because a friend said, you need to go on Tuesday nights to the Brass Dragon. It's a blast. And some of them may never play again, but they enjoyed the opportunity to build community around the table. And that has carried over into, if anybody walks in this store on a day when I'm not by myself, because I suck at magic, but if you walk in this store Tuesday through Sunday, and my right-hand man, Matthew, is here, he will drop what he's doing and go sit down at that back table with you and show you how to play magic. One of my community leaders, Jordan, will absolutely, if he's in here, he'll roll out his backpack and show you how to play Gundam or One Piece. I mean, it's like that. I've got a Warhammer community that it's funny because I didn't necessarily pick these people. They just kind of found me. And I guess they latched onto this attitude without me really saying. But I got a Warhammer community that 5 or 6 times a week, somebody's booking a table just to come in and show somebody how to play. And that morphed into a full-on Warhammer 101 day that we have once a month. Probably going to push pause on that this month because the rules are changing for next month. But in July, we're going to have a big old Warhammer 11th edition day, So we want to be that place that attracts new players, creates new players, and makes everybody comfortable coming in and being okay with not knowing how to play. My gosh, even my Magic community on Monday nights, when we do Commander nights, if somebody doesn't know how to play, I mean, I've got folks who run around with extra Commander decks just so when somebody new shows up, they can be, hey, come sit in our pod. There's your deck. Let me tell you real quick how to do this. They'll show them how to play. So that is exactly what I set out to do, and that is exactly what is happening.
That's interesting. I think there's 2 really interesting points there, and I think it's culture that you've built, and I think that informs the community, and that you're exuding this energy of what you want and what you love, and then the spirit of what you're trying to bring to the store, and it seems like the customers and the people that you're working with, the people who, the ambassadors for Brass Dragon, right? The ones who are like, I'm on the Brass Dragon team, but maybe I'm not an employee yet, but I'm on the team. Right. Those people are adapting that attitude, and they're bringing other people in, and that's inherently viral in a good way, right? Like it's literally spreading the message amongst the community, and they're bringing other people in voluntarily, and that sounds awesome. So I think it's a really interesting point. You've baked in this this great culture of teaching and learning and community, and just that the best parts of tabletop gaming is like, that's kind of how I'm interpreting it.
Yeah, and then thank you. Yeah,
you're the one doing it, so it's going great, I guess.
I appreciate you noticing it and calling it out. You've kind of defined it even better than I could. That's how it happened.
Yeah, I try to encapsulate. I'm trying to listen and then be like, okay, this is what I'm hearing. The other thing that I think is really cool, and this is a conversation I've had with other stores and other store owners outside the podcast, but also in the podcast, is the idea that you should focus on the non-traditional customer, in the sense that, which is kind of like a way to flip it, because I would think game store people like us are probably non-traditional in the sense of the society at large. But most game stores, like you said, that the people, the customers that are game store customers, they'll come find you, right? They'll know where you are. They'll discover whatever game store is in town. They'll get there. But the people who aren't normally, tabletop hobbyists or involved in the hobby in some way, they are difficult to reach. And you said at the beginning that, you've seen the phenomenon of like, the store is busy, it's packed, there's people having a good time, and then you have somebody come into the store for the first time potentially, and they've never been in that environment before, and it can feel extremely intimidating, because you're like, I'm the odd person out. Everyone else, like you said, they all know what's going on, and I don't get it. I'm on the outside looking in right now. And that can be a really tough position to be in as a customer, right? If you are somebody who's just like, my son has talked about Pokemon. I have no idea what Pokemon is. I just want to kind of get some more information. I want to be able to play this with them, whatever it happens to be. Yep. And you come in, you need to have an environment that allows them to engage with you and can engage with a hobby,
Mm.
it doesn't put up those barriers that we nerds can do just by being ourselves. Because you can love something
Yeah.
so much and be so immersed in it that you don't even realize how much of a wall you had to climb over initially to get in there.
Yeah.
So it sounds
That's a
like you're
really
also
cool way of
breaking
putting
down
it.
that wall.
Yeah, I think we kind of are. So a couple of things come to mind. One thing, a guy that came in not too long ago said, if you think about it, everybody's a little nerdy about something. Everybody is
Yep.
even dudes who just love football. But they probably know statistics inside and out. Well,
Mhm.
I mean, you're into
Yeah,
that. And
they're
if I
football
walk in
nerds.
on your conversation about football, are you the kind of person who's going to act like I'm stupid because I don't know about football? Or are you going to be the kind of person who says, well, here's what that means, dude, and this is why it's cool? And I think that's the attitude we've taken. The other thing I'll say is the way I described it to my employees is that if I went to Guitar Center to buy my first guitar, and when I walked in, every single person was sitting down playing like Eddie Van Halen, I would turn around and walk out, right?
Yeah. It'd be so intimidating. It would be so hard to see yourself
Yeah,
in that
it can
space.
be really intimidating, and so we do try to take some of that out.
This episode was brought to you by EventForge, the events platform I built specifically for tabletop game stores. Not a generic ticketing tool that D20 slapped on it. Every feature from customizable calendars, ticketing reminders, QR check-ins, attendance tracking, and integrations for platforms like Shopify, Discord, and Meetup are designed around how tabletop game stores actually run events. It looks gorgeous on your website, your players will love it, and the game store owners using it have had some incredibly kind things to say so far. Sign up for the free plan right now at eventforge.online.
I'm going to drop this in here as a footnote because I just looked this up to make sure I said it right. But one of the things that you mentioned, and this is great because this is a societal, sociological thread that we could go way down the rabbit hole if you wanted to. But you said appealing first at a game store, appealing to the non-traditional game store customer. Because truly, we, generally speaking, we who are tabletop gamers, we're comic book people, we're nerds and geeks and dorks, whatever you want to call us all about our things, right? We're the non-traditional customer in most cases, right? I attended a seminar at Gamma a couple of years ago when I very first went, and somebody mentioned this book, and I'm going to mention to anybody who's starting out the concept of appealing to somebody other than just your regular game store sort of person, a person who spent their entire lives in and out of game stores, right? The name of the book is called Why We Buy. Have you ever heard of it? It's called
Yep.
Why We Buy. It's by a guy named Paco Underhill, which just sounds like the most made up name ever, Mr. Underhill.
Sounds like a hobbit.
Yeah, right. Hey, Paco sounds like a hobbit. If there's a science to retail, this book is it. And it's very entertaining. He's a funny guy. And these guys watched thousands and thousands upon thousands of hours of security camera footage for giant retailers. And they're just studying people walking around stores. So one bit of advice, and this is going to get a little technical and maybe too soon to go, but I'll tell you, one of the things that I got out of that book immediately was your target customer in a game store just does not need to be your average gamer. Now, I'm not going to stereotype. I'm not going to profile anybody, but you know who they are. We all know who they are. They're us. They're us. They're our friends,
Yeah. They're in the walls. We are them.
Yeah, that's right. But the reason that my store looks a little more like a boutique than a game store is because your target customer needs to be a soccer mom. Because dudes who are into games, generally speaking, they're there to get their thing. They're going to walk in, they're going to grab the thing, and they're going to leave. They may or may not notice what color the walls are, things like that.
Yeah.
But when mom comes in, she takes note of things. I can't tell you the greatest compliment I've ever gotten. And those of you who've been open for a while, tell me this wouldn't be the coolest compliment. I've heard this multiple times. Wow, your store smells so nice. It's like, I didn't really necessarily mean for it to. There's a candle rolling in the front or in the back usually but the idea is, most game stores and I'm not knocking on anybody because there's people that just are killing it in a traditional game store. That's great. I don't have the space. I got to maximize 1,200 square feet, of which really only I'm splitting about 600 and 600 play space versus retail. I had to come up with something different. But a lot of game stores kind of end up looking like just like a Walmart for games, or like a basement, that's just, stacked high and tight and like, amazed, things like that. I was like, I got to do something different, you know, and that's why everything was centered around exactly what you just said. Who's the person that we're trying to appeal to immediately? I knew the minute that I'd go online and say, okay, I got D&D, I got Warhammer. I mean, people are going to find you, right?
Mhm.
They're going to find game store people are going to find you, but the amount of people that walk through this door that are either just curious or somebody has told them about it that are not tabletop gamers, and maybe they just came in looking for that gift for somebody or something like that. And some of the people who become some of our community regulars, particularly like the board game community that we've developed, they're not people that would normally be hanging out at the game store playing Magic 3 times a week. It's really cool, and there's nothing wrong with that model for other people. I just had to do something a little bit different, and it turns out that it's worked. So that culture is part of it. And one of the things I
Mhm.
did learn, I wasn't asleep at the wheel for 30 years in corporate America. I actually had a director of human resources for a huge company that I worked for say, if you don't define your culture will define itself. And even when it's just me and 4 employees, that can't be a thing. So for that
Yeah.
target customer to walk out with an impression means everybody's got to be on the same page.
I think on the culture note, one of the things I would add is that if you don't define it, it will define itself by the lowest common denominator.
Oh,
And it's
mm,
what you allow, right? So it's one of those things of like
yeah, yeah,
if you allow certain language in your store and you don't talk to the person and say, "Hey, that's not we don't
yeah,
appreciate that," then that becomes the bar, right? And then someone
yeah.
else will be like, "Oh, this is okay now," and like it just becomes accepted, even if it's not stated specifically. It's not like the rules are you can say whatever you want or you tolerate whatever kind of behavior.
Hmm.
But if it's not, yeah, consciously reinforced and cultivated, then it will fall to whatever the baseline is, which is usually
Yeah.
not what you want it to be. So it's an active process of going
Yes.
out and
Yeah.
and doing it every day and saying this is what we want and modeling the behavior and all of that good stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, just an additional note on that for anyone who's listening and feeling like, well, why does my store not feel like that? Maybe that's why he just like a little bit more
Mm,
of an active role in trying to shape what the values of the store and the vision of the store and the vision of the business and the community at large, and saying this is what we want, and then trying to
yeah.
to
Yeah.
reinforce it. But a nice smelling store is also a really advantageous thing, and it's
Yeah.
super easy to do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was just the first time it happened, it caught me off guard. I thought, well, that's kind of funny. And then it's happened a couple other times. It's like, okay, so whatever we're doing on that front, keep it going.
yeah, yeah. Well, the good thing and the bad thing, in some senses, is that the traditional idea of what a game store has been in society at large is the gamer dungeon, right? The
Oh,
comic book
yeah.
guy from The Simpsons, right? Like that's the game store
Mm, yeah.
image that a lot of people have in their minds. And a lot of stores, the industry has matured a ton since I've started this podcast, which is great. And the standard has gone way higher than it was before. So that's not quite the same. It's gradually changing. But there are still plenty of game stores out there that are, just kind of like you said, they're the Walmarts of the business. And they're just they're throwing up their fold up tables and they're bringing out their binders and they've got their whatever they need to get the thing going. But that sets a very low bar for expectation, which means that you can very easily, just put in a little bit of effort and you're in the top 5% of game stores in the country pretty quickly. So, but yeah,
Yeah. That's
atmosphere,
a really good
the
point.
the
Yeah.
sense, not body odor, not gamer body odor. If you just don't have that
Right.
permeating your store, you're already
Yeah.
way ahead of the crowd, right?
Yeah. It has been, yeah. So there's some check boxes that I feel very, very proud to have sort of checked off. And that's one of them is just like having created an atmosphere that I'm getting feedback from your average person that they like this place. Now, the feedback I've gotten from folks who are regular game store folks, they notice that little extra effort. They notice that little effort, man. You hit the door, it's right there. Nobody walks in the door, and we're not like, it's not quite as obnoxious as like the welcome to Moe's. If you guys have Moe's Southwest Grill, that kind of thing. But like everybody is greeted, everybody is given a chance to walk around, but somebody will approach you and talk to you at some point and just see if you need any help, that kind of thing. The store is, we keep it clean, we keep it tidy, that kind of thing. So but even the traditional game store folks notice that this place is a little different. And last note about culture from my end, what's been really interesting is we've got a code of conduct that's on our website, but I don't know how many people actually read it. But our customers kind of police themselves.
Mhm.
We're like, our Magic community is so cool and so laid back, and we don't have people throwing their cards and throwing fits and being ugly and people telling me I never want to play with that guy again. Things like, we just don't have that. I mean, again, those people just don't stick around. Maybe they come once and they realize that's not the vibe. If they move on, I don't know. But
Yeah.
our community is just terrific, and they get it too.
Yeah. I think I don't have the stats for this to say definitively any one way or another, but it feels like the culture point isn't actually that. I don't want to say it's easy, but
Right.
it's not as big of a lift as it sounds initially. Like you're saying that you have a handful of people who have adopted the spirit of what you've brought to the store, and that's
Mm.
enough to kind of permeate most of the rest of the community, right? If you have a handful of people who just get it, they are going to also horizontally reinforce, the rules in a sense of like expectations, maybe not, being bossy perhaps, but
Right.
they will tell
Well, you don't
other
have to.
people,
Yeah.
this is what the store is all about. Here's what we're here for. We're not going to we didn't come here to complain. We came here to have a good time.
Mm.
And then that naturally just kind of creates the atmosphere that permeates the space. So if somebody's, like, oh, how do I achieve this, right? How do I systematize this? How do I make this part of my business? It could be as simple as like, okay, tell your employees, get your team on board with the same, attitude. And this is the behavioral expectations of what we want to see. So they get it. But then if they can just pass it on to like one layer deeper, just a few people who are in the leadership kind of position of the community, that might be enough to like turn the ship around. And then, like you said, the people who don't jive with that, maybe they'll just go to the store down the street where that's okay. And if that's the store that's okay with it, that's cool, right? Yeah. I wanted to ask though. So we talked about, some of the things that we've learned along the way, some of the things that you've picked up that, have gone really well. Have you run into anything where you're like, that was a mistake? Have you had any
Oh man.
big boo-boo moments where you're like, no, can't do that again. Not gonna make that mistake again.
I don't know that there's ever been anything like huge, but
Oh,
lots
that's
of
good.
lots of little things that we've tried that just didn't work. I don't know that we've had the I don't know that we've had the big boo-boo. Like, for example, to me, a big boo-boo is something that loses you a customer.
Mm.
That's to me what the big boo-boo is. I don't know that we've had anything like that, but we've definitely had some events that we didn't particularly run super, super well while we were kind of learning, like, for example, how Bandai does things and, trying to figure
Sure.
out how to navigate the whole thing where it's like, well, you registered on the Bandai website for this one piece event, but you also have to register at our place because we have to get you a seat, right? Little things like that, and navigating those types of things. That's probably been where I think that we still have got to our processes have still got to be tightened up, because from time to time we'll still have a situation where somebody they show up and there's just no seat for them, because we didn't somewhere there's a miss there. We always figure out how to accommodate those people. We've done all kinds of crazy things. We've actually had a side tournament that wasn't even official over at another table because we had 4 people on a waiting list, and there was just no room in the end. We couldn't get them in the official tournament. We're like, hey, you're here. We just gave them some promos and let them sit down and play, because they were already here. That kind of thing.
Mm.
I think that's probably the closest thing to a black eye I'd say I've gotten in terms of hard lessons. And I got to be honest with you, the thing for me personally, and this again, my staff all get this, collectively, our absolute worst feeling is letting somebody down. That letting somebody down, not delivering on an expectation. I hate that just as a person, and I definitely don't want that for our customers. And so when you know, I got a big weekend coming up. There's a One Piece tournament. And so we've put a couple of things in place we haven't done before to make sure that Friday and Saturday, when we have this event, we should not have that disappointment where somebody's like, they signed at one place but not the other. I don't have a seat for you. I mean, hopefully that, we've kind of rectified some of that. The other mistakes I'd make were just things like, I got so much dead stock sitting on my shelves, dude. Remember the beginning when I told you I thought I knew what I wanted to sell? On my little Shopify app, I have a ridiculous amount of what's called C stock. This is the stuff that's low turn and in some cases hasn't ever turned. Yeah, that's just irritating is what that is.
Yeah,
Right
that
for a
though is at
sale,
least part of the growing process.
Yeah.
That's part of the
Yeah.
growing process. That
Yeah.
you have to start out with a selection, to figure out what people want, and then you can start to
Right.
guide it in that direction. But yes, that's
Hmm.
not great.
Yeah.
Starting off with all of this anchor stock that's not going anywhere, not doing anything.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
exactly what it is too. It's anchor stock. That's one of our projects for the next little while here. I'm seriously considering just having like a fire sale, a sidewalk sale, man. Just everything must go.
Well, that's kind of what you need to do. And like, I think this is an interesting discussion maybe to come in here, because I literally had this conversation yesterday with a client. Was the idea of clearance, right? What do you
Mm,
do? How do you move stock that doesn't move, right? How do you get this
yeah.
stuff out of here? Especially if, like you said, the turn rate's so low, like this isn't going anywhere. But we need to allocate this inventory money somewhere else.
Yeah.
Do you have do you have a system? Are you afraid? I know some store owners are like, I hate
Mm,
discounts, right? I hate discounting.
yeah.
I never want to sell anything. No sales. It trains the customers to expect a sale. They don't want to do that. And then there's others who are like, sales are fine. They're a tool. Where do you
Yeah.
stand on that?
Uh, so we have not actually had a true sale yet. We'll do fun days where one of our favorite things is we'll do on special occasions, we'll do roll for discount. You come up to the counter, roll a D20, 1 to 10%, 1 to 10 is a 5% discount. So everybody's getting a little something, 10 to 15% is like I think we did that one's like a 15% discount, and then if you roll a 20, you get a 20% discount, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So we do things like that to kind of gamify it a little bit. We haven't ever had a true sale, and I'm not scared of it. It is interesting because you look at your top line of sales through the door, and then on the next line under there's like minus your discounts. There's a time I think early on where that really gave me kind of that, but what I've realized is that we're not selling on price to begin with. We're just not. And the industry being what it is, I know you can go to Walmart and I know that you can go to Amazon and get some of these things, and that's okay. We're trying to create value in other ways, and
Mhm.
most of our stuff is at MSRP. Now, I also have a very aggressive loyalty program that I think has been huge. And well, there's some they would say was aggressive. I mean, it may not be aggressive enough, but we have I call it's the loot points program. You get 5 loot points for every dollar you spend. It's basically 5% cash back. And you don't think much about it, but every time you walk up to this register, my employees are trained to say, "Oh, look, you've got $5 off." And when people go, "Oh, yeah," and they go grab another pack, it truly is, it's become a loyalty program. I love the fact that some of these Warhammer dudes wear me out because every time they buy a box of little plastic dudes, it's $85. And so they're racking up the loot points. But when one of these guys rolls up here and he's got a $25 discount and he's buying a combat patrol for $170, I'm like, dude, that is awesome. That's awesome. So I'm definitely not afraid of discounts in that regard. I think discounts for the sake of discounts, that is one of the things that like if you just flat out just everything starts at a discount. I don't know that there's any value in that. And I think to your point too, if people just sort of expect, well, I'm going to go
Mhm.
buy here because it's always this price. Now they're overlooking whatever else it is that you offer by way of, and again, the value add that I'm talking about is your experience when you walk in the store. And I know that some people are automatically looking at me right now, I'm just going, who cares? Trust me, people care. The one problem I
Yeah.
do not have is getting people through this door. So what we're doing is definitely working, and prices being what they are, we've got some things to, I guess, to motivate the sale, by way of the Loot Points program. I mean, straight across the board, military, first responders, veterans, 10% discount for that. This fall, we're going to implement points for grades. Kids bring us their report card and get a discount, things like that. So if it's tied
I
to
like that.
something and we can gamify it, that also makes it more fun.
Mhm.
Now, all that is to say, I'm not kidding. I'm going to trot out a bunch of this stuff and probably put this a sidewalk sale on and just clear it out. Because I do. I need that. I need. I need that. I need that cash from those dead items to go to the things that I need that turn quickly. That is probably the retail aspect of this has been the toughest thing for me to learn because I've been in sales for 30 years. That part is easy. The barrier to entry, for those of you who are thinking about opening a store, here's where they get you. The barrier to entry in this business is very low. And this is why people open and immediately get too far
Mhm.
out over their skis and close in a year. Look at this. I can buy this for 45% off. Oh, wow, man, this guy's selling everything at 50% off. And so that's great. Those margins look amazing. And then you hire your first employee, man. Then you pay your electric bill.
Mhm. Start
So
adding in your overhead.
yeah. So you can't be scared of doing things that drive business like discounts and things like that, but you also got to keep your eye on it. Really, for me, if my biggest financial challenge is turnover stock. We just know that the trading cards are what keep us afloat most months. Trading cards, accessories, and events for the TCG, 46% of our business in May. So
Hmm.
we know that's going to happen. And I know the margins on most of that stuff is a little less than some of the other things, but I mean, it is what it is. So if I can take this stuff that's sitting in C stock and double down on some of these TCGs that have really taken off, that's where that needs to go.
Yeah,
So
and that's the job of most store owners as the buyer, is figuring out, where the inventory money needs to be in order for the business to continue existing and
yep,
continue being an ongoing concern and all of that.
yeah,
And that's pretty important, right? So the idea of reallocation is where it would go.
mhm,
How do you determine, what to invest in? What's your metric for figuring out, okay, this is what the community wants in terms of product. Here's what we
yeah.
can, provide for them. How are you going to change that?
Yeah, this is great. I'm glad you asked that because I'm in the middle of a not great conversation right now on Discord because we are not going to, at least for a little while, we're not going to support Lorcana with organized play for a little while. We sunk a bunch of money into it and it hasn't moved. Our community is just not very engaged for some reason. Gundam, we're one of the only stores in Middle Tennessee that hosts Gundam events. They're regulars. They come, they support the game, we support them. It's like, so for me in this community, and it's probably, I mean, there's people that say I'm cutting off my nose to spite my face, but I'm like, no, right now I've got a lot of dead stock sitting on that shelf right over there in Lorcana cards that just not moving. So I'll come back to it at some point, but right now, as a guy who's only been open 7 months and I need cash flow, if I'm not turning, particularly if it's in a segment that's a quick growth segment, if I'm not,
Mhm.
it doesn't need to be 25, 25, 25, it's, between, Magic, One Piece and Gundam and Lorcana. And we also do sorcery, which is kind of a niche game. I mean, it doesn't all have to be even across the
Mm.
board, but if it sits, for 30 or 60 days and it hasn't turned at least once, that's where we have to kind of look at and say, okay, we'll come back to this, see what we can do to, and again, what can we do to beef up this community? Not nobody wants this. Well, yeah, there's some people who do, but do I keep buying for them? Or do I, so that's a discussion that we're having over the next few weeks. And, the Warhammer community is super, and Warhammer, yeah, it's kind of expensive. It's kind of expensive to have it sit, but when it turns and the margin's good and it's, and it turns faster than I even anticipated that it would because we have an active community, that kind of thing.
Huh?
So I don't know that I have a true metric, but each month when I look at the reports on best-selling segments is where I start and then I drill into the segment.
Yeah, no, got to start somewhere with some sort of expectation about what you need. I think that's an interesting
Yeah.
point too about the
Yeah.
Lorcana. The idea of saying, it doesn't have to be Lorcana. It could be another game, right? It depends.
Yeah.
Every game might just kind of fall off depending on the store and the community that's around it, what they want. But in your case, it's Lorcana that just didn't take off, right? And you can say, okay, well, we're not gonna we have other events that other people want to play more, so we have more space, and we're gonna allocate that time to these games, right?
Yeah.
And we're gonna,
Yeah.
the product will still be here until it's not, and then maybe we'll bring it back. But the idea of like maybe the reversal of flipping the expectation and using the events as kind of like your barometer, right? Like almost like
Yeah.
prove that this is a game that you want to see supported, right? And it's an interesting discussion. And like, how do you, as the store owner, how do you determine what's worth bringing in and investing in? Because like any game that you or any product line that you want to bring in is going to be a fairly sizable investment to support it
Hmm.
correctly or enough,
Yeah.
right? But then, do you have a customer base for it? And if you bring it in,
Yeah.
will the customers appear? You don't have a guarantee on that. So it's
Yeah.
it's it's an always an interesting like gamble, right? Like if I build it, will they
Yeah.
come? If you
Yeah.
bring it
Oh,
in, will they
absolutely.
appear? And are they not here because I don't have it? Or do they just not exist? Right.
Yeah, and that has been way back to your statement at the beginning. The wallet, the customer's wallets will sort of tell you what it is that they want. I had this idea in my head. I didn't want to sell trading cards because I didn't understand them. I didn't want to get into that. Yeah, if I had my way, I didn't even really want to sell Warhammer. Believe it or not, my Warhammer person almost had to talk me into it. There's a whole side story. It's actually kind of funny. People think I'm making it up. I'm like, no, they actually called me because at the time I would have been the only person in the county carrying, Games Workshop. But I didn't, my thing was I had in my head what it was, but one of the smartest things anybody told me early on was to go wide and not deep at the beginning, because you can define you need to define your store and who you want your store to be, what you want your store to be, and that's fine. But when it comes to the products, my store is not defined by the products I sell. I will tell you that right now. If I stopped
Mm.
selling Magic today, it would be a financial dumb thing to do, but we would still be who we are, and we would still have people coming in to play something. You know what I mean? We are not the products we sell. We're a gathering place. The
I like
store is
that.
the gateway to get people together. I don't love games. I love being a DM, but I don't love games. I love people. That's why we're open. And so if I swap out a game here and there, I mean, we'll still be who we are. And when the guy told me go wide, not deep, what he was really talking about was don't go too far in one direction because your community may tell you something different.
Hmm.
And so I did. And I went wide on role playing games, and I did Warhammer, and I did board games and a bunch of party games and things like that. And it took a few months, took 2 months exactly. And then the first part timer I hired said, okay, people keep asking about Magic. We got to do this. And it's his strong point. He said, I'll run it for you. I said, great.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, the community said, this is what we want. Okay. And so I immediately said, all right, you tell me what to get, we'll get it. And now it's a huge part of our store, and that led into some other trading card games that have been really, really good. So,
Mm.
and people actually, what's interesting is that people will come here and play games we don't even sell. I think that's one of my favorite things. The reason I ended up with a Gundam community is because these guys are just looking for a place to come play, and they just started booking a table on Saturday mornings, and we got to talking to them about it, and it's like, man, this game looks really, really cool. Why don't you go play down at store A, store B, or whatever? Like, well, they don't support it. They don't have, they don't have a play space, or they don't have organized play. I'm like, really? So that's how we got into Gundam, customer driven decision, you know?
Hmm. And
So
that's what I was gonna. That's kind of what I was thinking about with Lorcana, right? The idea of like,
yeah.
show me you want this, right? The Gundam players came out and
Mm,
in a sense, paid with put their money where their mouth is and said we
yeah.
were willing to pay just so we could sit down and enjoy this game that we like.
Yeah.
And if you happen to have another way for us to enjoy this, we would also partake in that, right? Like there's
Yeah.
evidence, and I guess that's an important thing in terms of determining the direction for your store in the future. It's like paying attention to what your customers or
Yeah.
potential customers are trying to say to you, because they're not going to come out, or at least most people won't say, "Hey, you should sell me this game." I would love to be able to buy, my Warhammer army from you guys.
Yeah.
Some of them will, but most of them won't. They'll just come in, they'll look and see you don't have it, and then maybe they'll indicate that they're kind of like, "Oh, I wish you had more of this," but they might just not engage,
Yeah.
right? You don't have it. So they'll just assume
Yeah.
you're not a Warhammer store. You're not for me. I'm going to go to the Warhammer store or whatever the game happens to be.
Right.
But paying attention and engaging, I think, is a really important point of like figuring that out, finding out what your customers actually want and what they
Yeah.
really want, what they're willing to pay for is way more important than what they say. But yeah, just
That's actually a good point too. And
interesting.
I hate to be that way, but hey, here's the thing. You can come play anything you want. We'll support you in that you can come here and play anything you want. We don't have to sell it, you know? It doesn't
Mhm.
mean we don't love you as a person. It just means that I may not buy, 35 boxes of your next pre-release, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but that could be an interesting a whole system right there, right? Imagine you
Mm,
had a system where you are booking tables. The expectation is you can come in and you can, you have open tables during certain days of the week. Come in, bring your games, bring whatever you want. Just let us know what you're playing, or just kind
yeah.
of being in there and being engaged. Like, hey, what'd you bring? What's going on? And then you could use that as data points to figure out, okay, well, I've got 20 people over the course of a month who are interested in this game or this particular product line or whatever, and they're doing it naturally. They're doing it organically without me telling them that we're doing this. Maybe
Right.
there's something there that's worth, supporting or bringing in. But yeah, it's just
Yeah.
interesting ideas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, that's one of the biggest questions about the early years of running the stores is figuring out
Mm,
what does the inventory need to be? What does the store need to be? What product lines need
yeah.
to be here for us to just continue this on? That you kind of shape around what you originally said. It's not the games that make up
Yeah.
the core of the store, right? It's the spirit, it's the experience that you're providing. And everything else is kind of just
Yeah.
the atmosphere.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. We know you can buy this stuff just about anywhere, and people choose to come by here. I have people special order stuff for me all the time. I'm like, you can get this on Amazon. They're like, yeah, I don't want to give Bezos my money. I'd rather
That's
give it to
a
you,
great attitude too.
and I get loot points. So there you go.
Yeah, rather support local and get some loot
Yeah,
points.
and get some loot points. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the what are the next 7 to 12 months looking like for Brass Dragon Games? Where do you
Oh
want
my
the store to
goodness.
go?
Well,
What's your vision?
the vision, man. I got a big vision, and I've always heard from lots of different thought leaders that I listen to. I listen to podcasts all the time. People in business, people, everybody from Tony Robbins to Ed Milet, guys like that have built multi-million-dollar businesses and things like that. The thing is, your dream has got to be big, and it's got to be big enough that you can't catch it right away. First of all, it's got to be out there. You've always got to
Like
be
that.
reaching to where even if you don't get there, if you do the steps necessary to get there, you are going to kill all these other goals. So, my big goal, and this you talk about putting it out into the universe. I've told everybody this who's come to work for me. So my goal is at some point in time, I want to bottle what it is that we're doing here, and I want this to become, a franchise. I want to come to your town, your little town that sits outside of Metropolis like we do, and I want to show you how to create this kind of a community because I think that this is something that's needed. I know there's franchises you can buy into right now. There are game store franchises. I don't know anything about them, but that's the big goal. That is the big goal. Short-term goals are get to the end of this year, take stock on, okay, whoo, because it took off like a shot. There's so much that I haven't even gotten to do yet because I always thought, on one of those slow Sunday afternoons, I'll sit down in the back there and I'll get down and I'll get around to doing this. There's been none of that. It has been like we open the doors and bam, not griping. Good problems to have. Like I said, my only problem, I do not have a problem getting people through the door. That's cool. So for me, the next big goal short term is improving the overall experience. And that means, yeah, we're in the process of changing our scheduling situation, ironically enough, as I put in another shameless plug for Event Forge. It took me a minute to find you, bro, but I'm glad I did. So we're in the process of figuring all that out because our booking is just crap right now. It's, we're using 2 different systems through Shopify to try to make something happen. And, that's why I came in and found you. One of the things that we try to do is, and I also read Jesse Cole's book. Jesse Cole's the guy who started the Savannah Bananas. I don't know if you guys know who they are. A minor league ball team that has created a whole new sport out of baseball. Absolutely amazing. One of the things that he talks about is they've got some very, very simple rules, and this is where I'm trying to get with everything here. And one of them is eliminating friction. How do we make everything easier? So scheduling, that's got to be fixed. That's the next short-term thing. Scheduling's got to be fixed. How do we adjust our calendar to where that back room, it's starting to get crowded? I've started to walk in here on a Thursday night sometimes, and it sounds like a middle school cafeteria. I don't like that. I love having people here, but there comes a point where I'm killing the vibe I set out to set. If somebody walks in, so we're already talking about how do we have more events with less seats so we can keep it from being a cacophony. That's next big step. And for me, getting these next 2 employees onboarded that are bringing different, I'm to the point now where I can hire people that are bringing something to the table instead of just somebody to stand here and work the checkout counter. My checkout counter help has been amazing. I've got a couple of part-timers who are wonderful. If anybody goes, we only have a couple of videos on TikTok, but one of my afternoon part-timers did a TikTok video that was just hysterical and wonderful. I'm like, can you keep doing that? Because that's another thing I suck at.
Yeah.
Do that, but I'm bringing in some people with actual, real world marketing and inventory experience that are customers who get the concept. I don't have to indoctrinate them to the way we want to do things. So for me, having a full team, so when we come sliding into home plate on October 24th of this year, having been open for a year, we take stock of things. I want to start October 25th with the dream team in place and a game plan that is, frankly, a great game plan that's longer than 30 days, because that's about all I can muster right now. I've been so caught up in the tactical that the dreamer got put to sleep about the middle of November last year because it was all about keeping the lights on. And I am not complaining. It's a good problem to have. But I want to start this next year with the dream team in place, a game plan for the full quarter, and then looking out for the year and be able to start hitting some of those growth markers that are going to allow us to figure out how to take this to the next level.
I like that. I think it's a good vision. I think I would love to circle back at some point and find out how things are going in the future to see how
That would be great. Yeah.
the dragon is played out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd
That
be
would be great.
a good.
I appreciate the opportunity to share my story because I've talked to a lot of other, even around here, Nashville was probably from everybody I talked to at Gamma that are from other big cities.
Mhm.
We have a completely unsaturated market here in Nashville in terms of tabletop game stores. People couldn't believe that my nearest competitors are like 7 miles one way and 8 miles or 9 miles the other way, but there's a lot of game stores starting to pop up. So I talked to a lot of people who are new to this. And one of you talk about rounding things out here. So
Yeah.
a fellow named Ron who owns the game Keep right down the road here. It's the store I used to go to when I was in high school. He bought it from the guy that was there when I was in, you know what I mean? Like he's been around a long time. When I talked to him about the possibility of opening a game store, I said, I don't want to step on anybody's toes. He said something I thought was terrific. And I think everybody needs to remember this. He said, look, our, our competition is not other good game stores. Our competition is Amazon. Our competition are these people who pop up, fly by night, blow out a bunch of product really, really cheap, and then wonder why they go out of business. People who don't serve the community. Those are the people that make things hard for us. But having somebody down the street who knows what they're doing and is helping build the community, he goes, that's not a problem. And I thought that was terrific, and I send him customers every day and he sends me customers every day. Hey, I don't have that, but you know what? Go see those guys,
Mhm.
and that goes for the next town over, the next little country town that's about 8 miles down the road the other way. 2 new stores there. I'm tight with those guys too. I mean, we're building it. What's interesting, we're actually building a pretty strong community of store owners too, which just helps everybody.
I agree.
Very
I,
interesting.
one of the pieces of advice that I got long time ago, like 25 years ago at this point, I still remember it. And it was the idea of cooperate as much as possible and only compete where necessary. And the idea
Mm,
was the same thing. Like, don't look at your, fellow store owners as like it's you versus me and I'm going to eat your lunch and like that kind of thing, because that's not really the case. There are so many opportunities for cooperation. There's so many chances
yeah.
for stores to enhance each other and
Yeah.
what you're doing. And like you said, like they aren't being a good game store is not a detriment to another good game store. If anything, you can actually make each other better because you make the community better and you improve. You can improve your customers and that benefits
Mhm.
them, and they can improve their customers, that benefits you. And like you can, like you said, you can collaborate, you can do all sorts of great stuff instead of seeing them as the enemy, because that's not really the case.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I
That's very
like that
true.
a lot. I think that's a really good, and I think that's the spirit of almost everybody who comes on the podcast, right? Most of the store owners I talk to, they will have kind of the same spirit of this cooperation. They're willing to share, like you are. You're willing to talk to other people about the things that you've gone through and the things that you've learned and all that stuff. And it's the idea is to make it better, right? To make it better for everybody, because that, in a strange way, comes back to make it better for you. But
Yeah.
it does. It's all mutually beneficial. Good free trade,
Yeah.
capitalism, all that stuff. In its truest sense, it raises the boats, right? It raises the tide, raises all boats. I like that a lot. I was going to ask you, do you have any potting words of wisdom, or do you want any advice for new
Oh,
store owners? I think it's a
man.
good chunk at the moment, but is there anything else that you wanted to
Yeah.
impart to somebody who's like, I want to do a brass dragon too? What do
Yeah.
what do I
I can
need?
tell you 2 different times in the past 7 months, I've had somebody come in and say, I've been thinking about doing this in my hometown. And the thing I tell them is, first thing is, it's easy to get into the business. Don't be fooled. These distributors want to sell to you. Okay. It is not the stuff on the shelves. I tell every one of them, it's not the stuff on the shelves. It is what happens for your customers when they walk in. Focus on the customers, not the stuff, period. Otherwise, you're Walmart. I mean,
Mm.
that's what I tell everybody. That is, if you will do that, I have a community that has been built and they're not only keeping us afloat as a store, we're thriving as a small business because we focused on people, our customers first, and we continue to do that.
I think that is some great advice to end the episode on. Where can
Cool.
people find out more about your store? Connect with you?
Yeah.
Give people a little bit of an indication.
Yeah, so brassdragongames.com. Among the things I was going to get to and never really did was our website. We're still using one of the Shopify templates that just came with our store. It's adequate. The shopping experience is not great, but really, really right now, our website is just, all I do is point people to the calendar. Look at the calendar, go sign up. Look at the calendar, go sign up. That's what the website really is doing for us right now. So that's part of the overhaul that's coming this quarter. But yeah, website is brassdragongames.com, Brass Dragon Games on Facebook and Instagram, and now the TikTok, as my dad would say. Are you on the TikTok? We're on the TikTok. Been kind of quiet on socials lately because it's been kind of up to me, but one of the people I'm hiring is going to fix that. So, but yeah, and if you ever want to drop me a line, the contact me, well, first of all, it's just Trey@brassdragongames.com is my email, but the contact us, a form on the website comes right to my phone. So if anybody has questions or
Easy to
listen,
get a hold
here's
of.
the other thing too, suggestions. I have no ego to bruise. I know I don't know what I'm doing. If you've got a suggestion, make it. I will, I would gladly accept free advice.
I know how you feel. Not to swing it back to Manaverse, but that has been crucial. Just give me advice. It's awesome if you are willing to take advice with people, who are willing to give you good constructive criticism. Super, super helpful. So yeah, definitely. If you have some ideas or you just want to connect, reach out to Trey.
Yep.
It's a cool dude.
Tom,
you can tell.
thank you so much for this opportunity, man. I really enjoyed the conversation. And man, I look forward. See, you're not getting rid of me. See, we're just getting started, man. You and I, we got stuff to do, man.
We sure do. All right. Well, on that note, we will see everybody again in the next episode of the podcast. And thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Take care, everybody.